Welcome to AI Podcast. Today, we'll discuss the most important current affairs from the Hindu 14 June 2026 edition with detailed analysis for UPSC aspirants.
Glad to be here and ready to get into it.
Absolutely. And to kick things off, I want to share today's motivational quote with you. The dawn does not arrive all at once. It begins with a single ray of light.
That's really fitting for today's topics, actually.
Right, because imagine for a moment the soil in your backyard suddenly becoming like a microscopic weapon, mutating bacteria to resist our strongest medicines.
Yeah, or imagine a superpower permanently blinding a nation's cyber defenses with just the flip of a switch thousands of miles away.
Exactly. That is the reality of the world we are unpacking today. We are taking these seemingly isolated events, global geopolitics, technological sovereignty, domestic policy, and even microscopic environmental shifts. And we're connecting the dots for you.
Because for anyone trying to genuinely understand global affairs, or, if you're preparing for a rigorous exam, making those connections is the entire game. The news cycle, it just comes at you in chaotic fragments.
Oh, totally. It's overwhelming.
Right, but when you look closely, you realize that a diplomatic signature in Washington can create a ripple effect that, say, alters the logistics of a server room in Bengaluru. Or, sadly, threatens the life of a merchant sailor in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
Understanding the why and the how behind those ripples. That's what separates just memorizing the news from actually mastering it.
So let's start by looking at one of the biggest ripples currently shaking the geopolitical chessboard, which is the impending US-Iran nuclear deal.
This is a massive one.
It really is. According to our sources, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that a deal is set to be signed this Sunday. And the immediate centerpiece of this is a 14-point framework known as the Islamabad Memorandum.
Right, the Islamabad Memorandum.
Yeah. And the core objective for the U.S. seems to be reopening the Strait of Hormuz to all shipping, essentially ending the shadow war with Iran and lifting naval blockades.
It is a massive diplomatic maneuver, but it is also a landscape of completely contradictory narratives.
How so?
Well, the U.S. narrative is heavily focused on containment and disarmament, right? President Trump highlighted the securing and destruction of what he calls nuclear dust.
Nuclear dust. That refers to highly enriched uranium.
Exactly. It's the fissile material that pushes a nation closer to weapons-grade capability. The U.S. position is that eliminating this dust is the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite, and they've stated publicly that no direct funds will be provided to Tehran.
But the view from Tehran is completely different. Iran's foreign minister is claiming that Iran's frozen global assets are going to be released the moment the ink is dry.
Which directly contradicts the U.S. statement.
Exactly. And adding another layer to this puzzle, there are quiet reports circulating that the UAE is independently unlocking up to $10 billion for Iran. Why would the UAE do that if the U.S. is claiming no funds are being released?
So this is where you have to look at the difference between global strategic goals and just, regional tactical survival.
Okay, break that down for me.
For the superpowers, the game is about uranium and long-term leverage. But for the UAE, the game is about immediate physical security. These reports suggest this back-channel unlocking of $10 billion is essentially a pragmatic move by the UAE to ensure Iranian-backed attacks on their territory just come to a halt.
Oh, wow. So they're buying peace, essentially.
Yeah. Whether the U.S. is quietly blessing this back channel or just looking the other way, lifting extreme economic pressure is the silent engine driving this 14-point memorandum forward.
And while these billions are being shuffled around, you have countries like India caught in a very dangerous crossfire. Because this blockade situation has had lethal consequences.
It really has.
The U.S. recently launched strikes enforcing their blockade, which tragically killed Indian seafarers working on foreign-flagged merchant ships, specifically the Sed de Bello and the Marivex. And at the exact same time, Iran is floating this idea of charging a, quote, service fee for ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is an incredibly alarming proposition under international maritime law. You just cannot treat an international strait like a private toll road.
Right. It's like a global toll booth where the toll collectors keep changing the rules and neutral merchant ships are the ones getting squeezed.
That's a great analogy. And this is precisely why diplomatic forums like the Indian Ocean Rim Association or IORA, they aren't just talking shops, right? They are critical geopolitical tools.
And India is currently the chair of IORA.
Exactly. While Washington and Tehran negotiate over centrifuges, India has to use its leadership position in IORA to rally a consensus that international waters cannot be taxed, arbitrarily blockaded, or militarized. I mean, the tragic death of those civilian mariners on the Setabelo and Marivex, it proves that when superpowers clash over maritime control, it's neutral citizens who suffer the real-world casualties.
It really makes you realize how vital it is for a nation to have its own protective shield. And that actually ties directly into what India is doing on the defense front.
The DRDO tests.
Yes, the Defense Research and Development Organization just demonstrated some serious muscle. They conducted consecutive flight tests for a multi-layered ballistic missile defense system, the BMD. And they also successfully completed the maiden flight test of the Naval Anti-Ship Missile Medium Range, or NASM-MR.
Building a multi-layered BMD is it's one of the most complex engineering challenges a military can undertake.
Is it really that difficult?
Oh, yeah. It is essentially trying to hit a speeding bullet with another speeding bullet while both are traveling at Mach speeds entirely outside the atmosphere.
That's insane.
And the NASM-MR, that gives the Indian Navy a highly sophisticated indigenous strike capability to counter maritime threats, which, as we just discussed with the Strait of Hormuz, are becoming incredibly volatile.
I'm a bit lost on one connection here, though. Alongside these missile tests, Union Minister Jitendra Singh announced that a national expert committee finally resolved an anomaly in the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, the PSLV.
Right, the ISRO launch vehicle.
Yeah, it puts ISRO back on track for a launch next month. But if we're mastering advanced anti-ship missiles and ballistic defenses, why is fixing a launch vehicle glitch so vital? Isn't space essentially just a delivery system?
It's way more than that. Space is the absolute backbone of the entire defense system. Think about the kill chain of a ballistic missile defense system. To intercept an incoming missile, you first have to detect the launch the second it happens. Then you have to track its trajectory continuously, calculate an intercept point, and guide your defense missile to that exact coordinate in space.
Right.
All of that relies on an uninterrupted network of early warning and communication satellites. If your PSLV, your primary delivery truck, is grounded due to an anomaly, your ability to replace aging satellites or launch new sensors just decays. Without the high ground of space telemetry, the most advanced missile shield on Earth is practically blind.
Oh, I see. So the hardware of defense is completely reliant on the software and data infrastructure above us.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a battlefield that doesn't use rockets at all, but algorithms. We are entering a new phase of geopolitics that experts are calling a war over AI sovereignty.
This is a huge shift.
Yeah, the U.S. government just made a very aggressive move. They abruptly blocked non-U.S. nationals from accessing two massive language models created by Anthropic called Mythos and Fable.
And, to be clear, this is not about preventing people from using a chatbot to write a cover letter, right?
No, not at all.
Models like Mythos are incredibly potent engines for analyzing code. They are used to find zero-day cybersecurity vulnerabilities, flaws in digital infrastructure that nobody else knows about yet. By blocking access, the U.S. is fundamentally treating these frontier AI models as advanced weapon systems subject to strict export controls.
And the fallout in India is immediate. Our sources mention that vital government cybersecurity initiatives, specifically Project Glasswing and efforts by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, are directly hit by this blockade.
Yeah, the impact is real.
Sridhar Vembu, who sits on the National Security Advisory Board, reacted strongly. He declared that, quote, globalization is dead, and urged the adoption of Indian or Chinese open source models.
It is a profound wake-up call regarding digital dependency. You know, TV Mohandas Pai is echoing this exact urgency, calling for a dedicated 50,000 crore rupee fund for deep tech.
50,000 crore. That's massive.
It is, but he pointed out a staggering reality. Training the next generation of these frontier models costs over $100 billion. The sheer scale of capital and physical infrastructure required to compete at that level, it's just reshaping global power dynamics.
Hold on, though. I just read that the Bengaluru-based firm Sarvam AI launched a 105 billion parameter model perfectly tailored for Indian languages and contexts.
I did, yeah.
So if we have domestic companies building these massive models, why are we panicking about losing access to an American one? Like, wait, if we're locked out of top-tier models like Mythos that can spot hidden cyber threats, aren't we basically fighting a modern digital war blindfolded? Can a 105 billion parameter model really bridge that gap right now?
To understand why that gap still exists, we need to quickly demystify what a parameter is. In artificial intelligence, parameters are like the synaptic connections in a human brain.
Okay.
They represent the model's capacity to learn complex patterns. A 105 billion parameter model is an incredible achievement for Sarvam AI, and it's fantastic for natural language processing. But frontier models like Mythos operate in the trillions of parameters. They have been fed an exponentially larger diet of data. And more importantly, it is an infrastructure bottleneck. Training a frontier model requires tens of thousands of specialized microchips called GPUs and data centers that consume the electricity of a small city.
Wow.
Having brilliant Indian AI talent but no access to vast GPU clusters, it's like having a team of world champion Formula One drivers but refusing to let them buy tires. The US knows this. By restricting access to fully trained models, they are turning computation into a geopolitical choke point.
When you put it like that, securing a nation's digital identity feels like a monumental, almost existential task.
It really is.
But interestingly, we're seeing equally intense struggles over identity playing out in the physical world. Let's look at the demographics and border management happening right now in Assam and then across the border in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
The contrast between the two situations provides a real masterclass in how states manage populations.
Let's start with Assam. The state cabinet has taken the drastic step of halting new Aadhaar enrollments for adults, with exemptions only for specific marginalized groups like tea garden communities. And the stated reason is that several districts have somehow achieved over 100% Aadhaar saturation.
Which sounds impossible, right?
Wait, yeah, how is a mathematical impossibility like over 100% saturation driving state policy?
Well, it happens when you're comparing current real-time enrollment data against outdated baseline census figures.
Oh, I see.
If the population has surged since the last official census due to migration, or if there is a high rate of duplicate enrollments, the Aadhaar numbers suddenly surpass the expected population limit.
So the data is out of sync.
Exactly. And for the Assam government, this statistical anomaly triggered severe anxieties that illegal immigrants are acquiring the Aadhaar to legitimize their residency. It is why Home Minister Amit Shah has also directed support for a national panel to study demographic changes and explore mechanisms for, quote, population stabilization.
So they're essentially using the restriction of a digital identity database as a physical border control tool.
That's exactly what it is.
Now look at how identity is managed differently across the border in POK. The unrest there isn't about digital databases, it's about physical demographic representation. The Joint Awami Action Committee, a banned group known as JAC, is leading massive protests.
Right, the JAEC protests.
They are demanding economic justice, specifically fair electricity pricing from the Mangla Dam, which sits in their territory. But the real political flashpoint is their demand to abolish the 12 reserved refugee seats in the 53-seat POK Assembly.
It is a perfect mirror image of the anxieties in Assam, just manifested differently. In PUK, the local population feels that these 12 reserved seats artificially dilute their political power and grant disproportionate influence to a specific demographic group supported by Islamabad.
Wow, it all comes back to demographics.
Whether you're looking at access to a digital identification number in Assam or the allocation of legislative seats in PA, demographic data dictates who gets resources and who gets a voice. For you, as a student of geopolitics listening to this deep dive, the takeaway is that managing diverse, shifting populations is the most sensitive security challenge in South Asia today.
Demographics often highlight where a region is divided, but infrastructure is usually designed to bridge those divides. And we just saw a massive breakthrough, literally, with the Zojila tunnel.
This is such a spectacular feat of engineering. The Zojila tunnel is a 13.14-kilometer-long passage bored straight through the Himalayas at an altitude of over 11,000 feet.
That's incredible.
Historically, the Kargil Dras region is effectively cut off from the rest of the country for 4 to 6 months every year due to immense snowfall blocking the mountain passes.
This tunnel is essentially a geographical bypass surgery for Ladakh. It ensures the economic and military lifeblood keeps flowing, even in the dead of winter. For the local civilian population, this means year-round access to fresh supplies, medical emergencies, and a massive boost to adventure tourism.
Absolutely. But the implications go far beyond the local economy.
Right, there's a strategic angle.
The dual-use nature of this infrastructure totally alters the strategic balance of the region. Military logistics in high-altitude environments are notoriously difficult. The ability to seamlessly move troops, heavy machinery, and critical supplies toward both the line of control and line of actual control.
Without being held hostage by winter avalanches.
Exactly. It's a monumental strategic advantage. It ensures that India's military posture remains robust and responsive 365 days a year.
We spent a lot of time talking about economic lifeblood and infrastructure, but let's bring it into the home, because a landmark Supreme Court ruling has just redefined the economy of the household in a way that challenges traditional GDP calculations.
This is a fascinating legal development. The Supreme Court of India delivered a ruling stating that unpaid domestic labor performed by homemakers must be assigned an independent, quantifiable economic value, specifically when calculating compensation in motor accident death claims.
The court didn't just state a principle, they assigned a hard number. They fixed a minimum notional income of 30,000 rupees per month, establishing a distinct compensation category called loss of domestic care.
And they mandated that this figure must increase by 10% every 3 years to account for inflation.
Yeah. The bench used incredibly powerful language, calling homemakers nation builders and the invisible architects of India's human capital. But assigning a strict 30,000 rupee value feels like putting a price tag on something entirely priceless. Does the court actually think that math covers the value of a homemaker? I mean, does the court acknowledge this math is just a stand-in for contributions that GDP usually ignores completely?
The court is very clear that no arithmetic can capture the true emotional or social value of a homemaker. But the legal system requires a pragmatic tool. This 30,000 rupees is exactly what you said, a stand-in value.
Right.
Historically, when a homemaker died in an accident, insurance companies and lower courts struggled to award fair financial compensation because there was no traditional paycheck or income tax return to reference.
So they just got nothing, or very little.
Exactly. By establishing this baseline, the Supreme Court is legally correcting a massive blind spot in traditional economics. It forces society to economically acknowledge that the invisible labor of cooking, cleaning, and caregiving is exactly what sustains the paid workforce. It is a profound shift from treating domestic labor as just a duty to recognizing it as an economic pillar.
It fundamentally changes how you view value. And shifting how we view the invisible forces around us is exactly what our final two topics demand. We are moving from the microeconomics of the household to the microscopic threats evolving in our soil, and then to the fundamental particles of the universe.
Epic shift.
Huge. Let's start with a startling new study in the journal Nature Microbiology regarding antimicrobial resistance, or AMR.
So antimicrobial resistance is already recognized as a looming global health crisis. We are used to the narrative that AMR is a human-made problem, right?
Yeah, that it stems from doctors overprescribing pills or the agricultural sector pumping livestock full of drugs.
But this research introduces a terrifying new variable, which is climate change. The study reveals that severe droughts are naturally increasing antimicrobial resistance right in the soil.
Wait, we've always been told AMR is our fault. But this study says the planet warming up and drying out is actually weaponizing the soil against us. That completely shifts the blame game, doesn't it? How does a lack of rain create superbugs?
It comes down to microbial warfare. Soil is packed with different types of bacteria, many of which naturally produce antibiotic compounds to kill off their competitors.
Okay, so they're fighting each other.
Right. When a severe drought hits and the soil dries up, the water content drops dramatically. This causes those natural antibiotic compounds to become highly concentrated in the remaining moisture. The bacteria living in that soil are suddenly swimming in a toxic, high-concentration soup of antibiotics.
Oh, wow.
To survive this harsh environment, they are forced to rapidly evolve resistance genes.
So the climate itself is forcing the mutation.
Precisely. And the study projects that by 2050, drought-prone areas, which prominently includes large parts of India, could face severe AMR crises driven entirely by this environmental stress. These highly resistant soil bacteria can eventually transfer their survival genes to human pathogens.
Meaning a drought in a farming region can directly degrade the efficacy of life-saving antibiotics used in an urban hospital.
It proves that climate change isn't just about hotter days or rising sea levels. It fundamentally alters the microscopic ecosystems we rely on.
That is deeply unsettling, but it shows how connected everything is. And speaking of the invisible forces connecting reality, we have a major scientific milestone coming from deep underground in China.
The JUNO Observatory.
Yes. The Jiangmen Underground Neutrino Observatory has officially released its first batch of data. This is a massive facility buried deep within the Earth to shield it from cosmic rays, and its entire purpose is to study neutrinos.
Neutrinos are fascinating. They are often called ghost particles.
Right, because they're subatomic particles emitted by the sun and by nuclear reactors, and billions of them pass right through our bodies every second without us ever feeling it.
Exactly. They are notoriously difficult to detect. But JUNO is trying to solve a very specific physics mystery called neutrino mass ordering.
What does that mean?
Well, there are three types or flavors of neutrinos, and the bizarre thing is, as they travel through space, they constantly shapeshift between these three flavors.
Wait, really?
Yeah, imagine a pitcher throwing a baseball, but mid-air it turns into a tennis ball, and by the time it hits the catcher's mitt, it's a golf ball.
That breaks every rule of physics I can think of.
It literally breaks the standard model, which is why scientists are so obsessed with it. By studying exactly how and why these neutrinos oscillate between flavors, physicists hope to uncover the fundamental rules governing the mass of the universe and why matter exists at all instead of just empty space. It is pure fundamental discovery.
What an incredible spectrum of human endeavor we've covered today in this deep dive. I mean, we started with the high-stakes chess match of the US-Iran nuclear deal and the very real dangers faced by merchant sailors navigating the Strait of Hormuz.
We saw how DRDO's missile tests and ISRO's PSLV fix secure our physical borders, while the Anthropic bloc reveals a vulnerable new digital front in the war for AI sovereignty.
Exactly. We unpacked the complexities of demographic management in Assam and Pak, celebrated the strategic triumph of the Zojila tunnel, explored a Supreme Court ruling that finally puts an economic value on invisible domestic labor.
And ended with the realization that drying Earth evolves new medical threats while physicists chase ghost particles deep underground.
It's just a lot to take in.
If there's one overarching takeaway for you today, it is the sheer density of interconnectedness. Think about the interconnectedness we've uncovered today. When a drought in the soil can make an antibiotic fail in a hospital, and a U.S. export control can suddenly blind an Indian cybersecurity system, it becomes clear that true sovereignty, whether biological, digital, or territorial, is the ultimate unresolved challenge of the 21st century. Keep questioning those connections.
A perfect way to bring it all back to that invisible web. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the dawn does not arrive all at once. It begins with that single ray of light. Keep following it and keep learning.